Hey, it's Jen. Today we are going to unpack the age-old question of what business should I build and why? And we're going to start that conversation with a comment from my YouTube page. So I'm going to read the comment, and it's from Gigi Montgomery. Gigi, I said that I would hit you up in the DMs, but I decided that your question and your comment, it was more of a comment than a question, but it leads to a question, was so good that I would just go ahead and create a video around it. So Gigi had mentioned to a previous post that I made on YouTube that I'm aligned with creating human-centered, planet-friendly design solutions for people, but this thing about passion is something I've struggled with most of my life. It's always been hard for me to pin down. So passion is hard for all of us to pin down, and I think part of the reason it's so hard for us to pin down is because people have really just kind of like bastardized the word in context. So the next thing I want to do is I went to Google and I just asked for a definition of passion, and I'm going to read the definition. I find that going back and actually like looking up the definition to a word is oftentimes helpful when I'm confused about a word or confused about like maybe what that word could or should mean to me. So that's why I'm bringing it back to the definition here. So the definition of passion is strong and barely controllable emotion. And then there's some things around, Christianity and the passion of the Christ. So what we're going to stick with is the first definition, strong and barely controllable emotion. So I think part of the reason why the word passion creates a internal almost cringe for us sometimes is because we associate it with like, I don't know, a romance novel, right? Where these two individuals in the story they have this passionate romance, this passionate love affair. Like you're supposed to be passionate about the person that you're dating or you married or whatever the heck. And that it makes it very difficult, I think, because of cultural, and it could depend on what culture you're from, honestly, but I know as an American, and I think for a lot of the Western cultures, this terminology can be confusing as it pertains to like a business specifically, and like, how in the heck am I supposed to inject my passion into a business or be passionate around a business? And I think that also, if we really start unpacking that, has a lot to do with concepts around just like employment and work. And here in the US, I know we've got like notions of that go back to puritanical, so the Puritans, which were a religious group here, it goes back to images of like what good looks like and how work ethic can bring you closer to God. And that's not saying that that's right or wrong, it just is what it is. But I think it makes it even that much more complex than try to take this word that you hear around romance and then you're trying to smoosh it with like business or work, which is generally got its own host of connotations put to it. And the combining of those two things can just get confusing as all get out. So what I think of is winding this back to, and I'll bring this back to a specific couple examples in my life. So in between like 2012 and 2016, I had a successful web design and social media marketing business. It was an agency type model. And I specialized in customers in the transportation and logistics industry, which was ripe for this type of work. There's, trucking companies and all kinds of companies within that space that during that time period had no idea what the heck social media was and how they could or should maybe start leveraging it for their business. And then also, like, there were quite a few businesses in that space that still didn't have a website, and that seems really odd with today's lens. But at the time, like, it was still really pretty hard to create a website. There wasn't like the Squarespaces and these templated things. You definitely weren't doing it with AI, right? Like, you actually had to know HTML, and there were very few like no code or minimal code ways of going about that. So you had to hire somebody, and there was generally a high cost associated to that. I shouldn't even say really. I was neither passionate about a web design. I was passionate about social media, but I was not passionate about web design. I wasn't even like, I was like kind of interested in it, but I wouldn't say I had this like strong, burning set of feelings around it. But I had a friend, a very close friend, who was and wanted to get into that. So we coupled together to start this business, and he ended up having a very good career in just overall like design as a result of that. But I didn't have a real strong passion for web design, nor did I have a strong passion for the industry of transportation and logistics. It just so happened that that's an industry that at one time I had a lot of passion for, right? But with age and time on task, you tend to learn the things around that. And that doesn't always continue to be self-sustaining into the future. And that's what had happened to me, but I had a lot of contacts in that space. So I went at it from a very pragmatic lens of, well, I'm passionate about one of these three things. And then I have a lot of contacts in this space. And pragmatically, that made sense. And it did. It was profitable within the first 7 days of me starting that adventure. And overall, it did very well for itself. But I personally fizzled out and just pooped out on it relatively quickly because I just didn't have the interest. And I think what we do is when we start thinking about, well, these are my interest areas, but how do I make money doing them? We just get quickly overwhelmed, and because we can't figure it all out. It's like, oh my gosh, it just feels like there's like 7,000 steps to being able to sort that out and begin to construct or decouple or even put together a way that you would create a monetization journey, let's say, around that interest. However, the problem in not starting a business in something you're not interested in, and when I say interest, right, there's a spectrum of interest. It has to be the type of thing I feel, and again, this is based on working with business owners and also just from my own internal journey and struggles around this as it pertains to my self-actualization, my career, advising business owners, a whole host of different things within that space, is that if you don't pick a topical area, at least that you have sustaining drive and interest around, it's going to be very difficult for you to weather the inevitable upward journey of being an entrepreneur, being a business starter, and then a business developer within that space. It's going to make it also very hard to like think about products and services that you can offer folks in that space. And that overwhelm, I think, creates this blockage in our mind about doing something that we're passionate about. So here's another personal example. I have a lot of preconceived notions, or have had, I should say, a lot of preconceived notions around the coaching, consulting, and guidance space. Because there's a lot of yahoos out there selling Yahoo things. They're not showing up with authenticity. They've turned this space into a cash cow, which it can be. But there's people who pursue this space with honesty, and people who pursue this space like a used car salesman or salesperson, I should say, because it's not gender specific by any stretch of the imagination. And it's those people who have approached it like a used car salesman and without a genuineness and an honesty, and they've got these flashy, fast-paced, cutting all over the place videos and everything else going on with it, that I think have just really ruined this space. And there's also a little bit of an internal eye roll when it's like, well, I'm a life coach. Okay, you're a life coach, right? Like, what does that mean? And so I have my own baggage around how that's characterized, but that is who I am. If I think about the last You know, I've had this career path that I'm in, and I've had this interest that is run in parallel with my career path around just like business in general. That coaching and mentorship is the thing that brings me the most self-actualization in the work that I've done, in the teams that I've led. When I speak to business owners, the conversations that I have are always taken with this like servant leader guidance, coaching, and mentor type mindset, and how I listen and how I respond to questions and how I ask questions. And so, like, it's, I'm a hypocrite for judging these other folks for what they do, because at the end of the day, that's what I do. That's what I've always done. That's one of the things that has made me very successful in my career and building these large teams. You know, my most recent team was 182 people, right? And I've mentored people up. I've mentored business owners up. And that's not because I'm all knowing and all powerful by any stretch of the imagination, but that's because I'm a good listener. I ask good questions. I ask challenging questions. And I love to ask questions. I'm a naturally curious person, and I'm naturally curious about literally everyone I meet in my life. And so there's elements of that that go into this as well. So although I was eye rolling this thing because of my own preconceived notions, hypocritical, yes, they definitely were. When I really got real with myself and sat down, you know, with a blank flashing cursor and just started to riff off of, if I think about building a business over the next 10 years, because that's my plan. This is a 10-year plan. This is not a fly-by-night kind of situation that I'm doing as I'm building this business and as I'm building it in public. I'm very passionate about midlifers taking all the skills and knowledge that they've acquired both through life experience at this point and also through corporate career experience, and using that to take a giant leap in their self-actualization, to then becoming that coach, that mentor, that consultant, that person that can guide that individual into that next chapter of their life in whatever area that might resonate with that individual. And so passion makes that confusing because of this, or it made it confusing for me because of the stories I told myself about the word passion. But at the end of the day, all I had was a strong and barely controllable emotion. I'm consulting my phone again. In seeing people succeed, in however they define that. Not how I define that, but however they define that, and they define that for themselves and for their business. And so it's very difficult to let go of these preconceived notions around a word like passion, but what that means in terms of how you ideate on your business, or inject maybe that back into your business, because maybe your business, you've started your business and you know, you've just been like working on it, grinding on it, and that has somewhat disappeared for you. You can always go find more passion. It's infinite and abundant in its nature. And you'll know when like that's dead for you, but oftentimes it just kind of needs an injection of dopamine. But also at the same time, like, you know what things you feel very strongly about, and I guarantee you can build a business, you can build a monetary engine around that. And there's a variety of vehicles from which you can do that. And so just trust that. And if you're like, man, I got a lot of interest, Jen, I get it. I'm a Gemini. I have a lot of interests too. And I love adventure and I love dopamine, and that all can become a problem too. But after spending time thinking through it, there's really only a couple things that have been lasting for me throughout my adult lifetime. And one of those things is coaching, mentoring, The other piece of it is just around business, right? Helping people start businesses, helping people scale and grow the businesses they've started. That's the thing that I read the most on. Business to me is it's a self-actualization vehicle. It's also a vehicle for adventure. And so like even when I read self-help type books and things like that, or watch videos or take courses or whatever, like that's why I'm watching it, is because I use business as a vehicle to do that. And I guarantee you that you have a thing like that too. And if you do, I'd love to talk to you more about that. So drop a comment below. Let me know what that thing is or what you think those things are. I've just started a community page, and that's a place where you can get a hold of me directly. And it's pretty small right now, and honestly, it's pretty raggedy, but it's a school community. It's called Midlife Launch. And so if you're really stuck on this, you know, I was doing this thing and I lost my passion, I think I might need to do a new thing or somehow inject passion into the thing. Or if you're just really, you've got a variety of interests and you don't know how to start to break that down and mash those interests into something that you could potentially build an income vehicle or a business around. A business is essentially an income vehicle around. I'd love to talk to you more, but like I said, drop a comment below or come find me on school and you can reach me directly there.